Jack Grayson cursed under his breath, glancing around the dense, unfamiliar jungle. His ship lay in pieces, one of its thrusters smoldering in the soft, purple dirt. The universe just couldn't resist tossing him onto some backwater planet filled with strange plants, weird animal noises, and zero hope of immediate rescue. So much for a smooth landing, he muttered, fiddling with a twisted wire and sighing as he realized it was hopeless without proper tools. The leaves rustled nearby, and Jack froze. Emerging from the undergrowth, a group of tall, otherworldly women surrounded him, each with strikingly vibrant skin tones, covered in tribal patterns that pulse like faint neon tattoos. They watched him with intense, curious eyes, occasionally whispering in their own language as they sized him up from head to toe. One of the women, clearly the leader, stepped forward. Her gaze was piercing, and when she spoke, it was in heavily accented but oddly familiar human words. "You... Lixman?" Jack blinked, trying to decide if he'd heard her right. "Lixman?" he repeated, puzzled. He hadn't the faintest idea what that could mean, but these aliens seemed to think it was a title of some importance. He gave a weak shrug. Sure. I guess?" The group gasped in collective awe, and the leader dropped to one knee, bowing her head in reverence. The others followed suit, murmuring in hushed tones. Jack's mouth went dry. Okay, this was getting weirder by the second. He scratched the back of his neck, unsure of what to say or do, but the leader straightened, a strange excitement in her eyes. "It is foretold," she said solemnly, gesturing toward the bioluminescent patches on her arms and shoulders. "The Lixman will restore the warmth of our T***ts. She emphasized the last word with a dramatic seriousness that left Jack scrambling to keep a straight face. Jack cleared his throat, forcing himself to think carefully. Maybe this was their way of asking for help. "Look, I don't know about this whole T***ts situation," he started, hoping he didn't sound too clueless. "But if there's something I can do to help, I'll try." The leader's face lit up with joy. She beckoned him closer, extending her arms so that one of the glowing patches was right in front of him. "Yes. The Lixman's task is to activate our sensors through thermal resonance Lix," she declared, her voice carrying a reverent weight. He swallowed, feeling the eyes of every woman in the tribe fixed on him. "So, you're saying I need to lick this?" He pointed at her arm, praying he wasn't misunderstanding her instructions. She nodded earnestly, anticipation glinting in her gaze. "Yes. Only you possess the skill to restore the sensors." With no other options and not wanting to offend his mysterious hosts, Jack leaned in hesitantly, giving the glowing patch on her arm a quick, awkward lick. Immediately, it flared with radiant light, brighter than before, and the crowd erupted into gasps of awe and admiration. The leader clasped her hands together, her voice quivering with emotion. "The Lixman is truly among us." Jack stepped back, wiping his mouth, half convinced he was part of some elaborate prank. But the leader's earnest expression suggested otherwise. I think that did it," he said, smiling awkwardly. The women around him erupted into joyful cheers, some even shedding tears of happiness. They clapped and laughed, clinging to one another in a display of profound relief. "Oh, great Lixman!" one of them exclaimed. "We have waited so long for this moment. You are truly here to raid us and restore our warmth." Jack raised a brow, caught off guard. "Wait, rate? As in, like, give you a score?" "Yes." The leader nodded enthusiastically. "We must know if our T***ts brings satisfaction to the legendary Lixman." Jack stifled a snicker. The double meanings were almost too much. "Well, I mean, it's pretty good. I'd say, a solid 9 out of 10? He couldn't believe he was actually rating her thermal sensor, but her look of gratitude made him bite back the urge to laugh. "Thank you, Lixman," she whispered with deep reverence. "Your rating has blessed us." She glanced over her shoulder, addressing the tribe. "Who else will receive the Lixman's blessing?" At once, another woman stepped forward, eyes wide and hopeful. Jack blinked, a flush creeping up his face as he realized he was about to be surrounded by a line of eager alien women, all desperate for him to perform this sacred ritual, and rate their T***ts. He chuckled nervously, shrugging. All right, I can handle this. The next in line was shorter than the leader but had an intense, determined expression. She lifted her arm, exposing another of those glowing thermal patches, waiting with anticipation that made Jack's cheeks burn. Keeping his composure, he leaned in and gave her sensor a quick lick, noting how it instantly brightened, lighting up her face in awe. The Lix man has blessed me, she gasped, looking down at the now illuminated patch as if he'd worked some ancient magic. The crowd's excitement grew with every successful activation, and the women around him started murmuring. Jack heard snippets like, "His technique is flawless," and "He is truly worthy of the title." He tried not to laugh at the seriousness with which they viewed what, to him, was just a strange cultural ritual. One by one, the alien women stepped up, each one almost reverently lifting her arm or shoulder for him to bless. He couldn't help but get swept up in their enthusiasm, giving his best performance for each activation. After the 10th or so ritual, a woman from the crowd spoke up, eyes wide with realization. "But the Lix man is only licking a single patch. We must test the resonance of all T***ts sensors." The crowd murmured their agreement, nodding with a gravity that almost made Jack burst out laughing. They were really taking this to the next level. He tried to play it cool, saying, "Well, I suppose for thoroughness, but maybe just one or two more." The leader stepped forward again, smiling and nodding as if this were all part of the prophecy. "The Lixman's generosity knows no bounds." She raised her other arm, revealing another sensor patch that glowed faintly. Jack gulped and leaned in, bracing himself as he gave it the now-practiced ritual lick, prompting another burst of radiance, and even more cheers. Jack was getting into it, despite himself. Each woman brought a different kind of joy to the ritual, each activation bringing smiles, thanks, and sometimes even a joyful tear or two. He'd never felt this appreciated in his life, even though, in the back of his mind, he couldn't believe this was actually happening. They took their ratings with absolute sincerity too. Any hesitation or 7 or 8 out of 10 led to an intense discussion amongst the tribe members, speculating what they could improve. Then a curious thought crossed his mind. "You know, where I'm from, we don't exactly have Lix men, at least not in this way." He tried to hint at the oddness of this whole thing, hoping someone would give him a clue as to how this ritual came about. But the women just looked at him, unfazed. "It is the duty of the Lix man to keep the sensors functional for generations," the leader explained. "Without your guidance and ratings, we would be left to drift in cold darkness." Jack felt a pang of sympathy, realizing that this was serious for them, even if it was strange to him. He softened his tone. "Well, I'm glad to help," he said genuinely. "But what happens if I have to leave?" The crowd gasped in shock, and the leader stepped forward with a look of deep concern. "But Lix man, your work here is not done. The warmth is only beginning to return. Without you, the light will fade." They really believed he was their only hope. The realization made Jack pause, his typical sarcasm replaced by a sense of responsibility. "I'll stay as long as I can," he assured them, wondering just how long this ritual was expected to go on. Before he could even catch his breath, a group of younger tribe members shyly approached him, each holding their arms and fidgeting nervously. We wish to be rated," one said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack stifled a laugh, maintaining a respectful tone. "All right, let's keep this going." By now, Jack had a routine down, but he noticed something new. The sensors glowed brighter for each successive ritual. Some of the women clapped and exclaimed that the Lixman's powers were growing. Jack didn't have the heart to tell them it was probably just body heat building up. Instead, he played along, leaning in and giving each woman a quick but sincere blessing. As the hours went on, the women's initial awe began to transform into a more casual familiarity. Some started laughing and teasing each other, joking about who had the brightest resonance, and even ribbing Jack for his technique. The leader leaned over at one point and whispered, You know, Lixman, we heard rumors that the true test involves the full resonance of both T*TS sensors at once. Jack almost choked. He glanced around, only to see the whole tribe nodding in agreement, looking at him with the utmost seriousness. He held back a laugh, realizing they truly expected this. Well, I suppose, as the Lixman, I'll have to do what's necessary. His double activation caused a near uproar, the crowd's cheers echoing through the jungle as Jack felt himself flush under their enthusiastic praise. As the glow around the sensors intensified, the leader clasped his hands, saying with heartfelt appreciation, "You have brought warmth and light to our tribe once more. You are more than just a Lixman. You are our hope." Jack, caught up in the moment, gave a sheepish grin and shrugged. All in a day's work. With a renewed sense of responsibility and a bit of pride, Jack was now well into his role as the Lixman. As he continued, he noticed each member of the tribe had a unique, almost ceremonial approach to presenting their thermal sensors. Some lifted their arms with a stately flair, while others displayed an eager shyness. Jack did his best to rate them all, maintaining his usual humor but noticing a deep, genuine gratitude from each of them. The women clustered around him as he worked through the crowd, and eventually, the tribal leader returned with a serious look. "Lixman, the Great Elder wishes to see you," she announced, motioning for him to follow. Jack felt the mood shift from casual fun to something deeper as the crowd parted and he found himself walking alongside her through the lush jungle. The air grew thick with a fragrant, floral scent that added to the mystery. The path led them to a larger, tent-like structure woven from vibrant plant fibers and glowing with natural phosphorescence. Inside, an older Thalari woman awaited him, sitting on an intricately designed chair, her sensors dim yet covered in elaborate patterns. Jack felt a sense of reverence as she lifted a hand, gesturing him closer. "So, you're the Lixman," she said, her voice soft but powerful. Jack could sense the respect she held for the role, despite its oddness. "Our people have waited a long time for the Lixman's return. My sensors," she continued, gesturing to her arms and shoulders, "are faded from age, but they hold stories of generations." She looked at him solemnly, and he felt a pang of respect for her and the culture around him. Jack carefully leaned forward, performing the ritual with a gentleness that seemed to awaken a soft glow in the elder's sensors. Her smile was subtle but warm, and she clasped his hands in hers, saying, "You have honored our ancestors." Her words resonated deeply, and for a moment, he almost forgot how strange this entire ritual was. As he stepped back, the leader whispered to him, "The elder sensors have not glowed in years. You are truly a Lixman of legends." Jack, caught off guard by the sincerity, nodded respectfully. They walked back to the main gathering area, where the tribe awaited him eagerly. Once they returned, the tribe greeted him with more enthusiastic cheers. They gathered around, hanging on his every word as he recounted stories from Earth, albeit the more light-hearted, goofy ones. The aliens burst into laughter at tales of Earth's peculiar customs and Jack's humorous misadventures, finding common ground in the absurdities of culture. As night fell, Jack noticed a strange hum in the air. The leader explained it was the Resonance Celebration, an event held to honor the Lixman's work and bring the tribe closer together. She gestured for him to sit as the tribe's women began to hum, creating a harmony that vibrated through the air. To his surprise, their sensors glowed in unison, casting a soft light that illuminated the gathering area in radiant colors. Suddenly, one of the younger tribe members jumped up and handed him a strange-looking instrument made from hollow reeds and glowing moss. She giggled as she tried to show him how to play it. Jack fumbled a bit but eventually got the hang of it, adding his own off-key notes to the melody. The tribe roared with laughter, clapping and cheering him on as he attempted to keep up with their rhythm. Then came the moment that would go down in Thalari history. A daring young Thalari called out, "Lixman, rate us all!" Jack blinked, realizing they expected him to give them scores for their performance. Caught in the humor of the moment, he grinned and started calling out numbers at random, pretending to be an esteemed judge. "You're a solid 9 out of 10 for rhythm," he called to one. "But a bit wobbly on the hand movements," The tribe erupted in laughter as he continued his ratings, each member beaming with pride at his silly critiques. They began to cheer him on, chanting his name. Lixman! Lixman! And even the leader couldn't hold back her laughter. Jack was officially a legend among the Thalari, the first human to activate the entire tribe and, apparently, the funniest Lixman they'd ever had. Eventually, as the laughter and music began to wind down, the leader approached him with a calm, almost wistful look. Lixman, your journey will take you beyond our tribe soon, she said. But know that you have brought warmth to our people like no other. Her words carried the weight of both gratitude and goodbye, and Jack found himself feeling unexpectedly sentimental. The tribe members began to say their farewells, each one expressing their thanks in their own quirky ways. One particularly enthusiastic Thalari gifted him a woven sash with the words, Honorary Lixman, stitched in the Thalari language. Another handed him a small pouch filled with a glowing plant paste they used for ceremonies, insisting it would keep his senses bright on his travels. Jack chuckled, accepting each gift with a grin and a hearty thank you. As he prepared to leave, the tribe lined up, creating a path for him back to his ship. The leader stepped forward one last time, raising her arm in a solemn farewell. May your journey be filled with light and laughter, Lixman, she said, bowing. Jack, feeling a rare twinge of emotion, gave a little bow in return. As he turned and made his way back to his ship, he looked back one last time, seeing the Thalari tribe waving him off, their sensors glowing in a warm, unified light. A chuckle escaped him as he boarded, wondering what his friends on Earth would think of his adventure. As he prepared for takeoff, Jack felt a strange mixture of pride, nostalgia, and amusement. He'd come here as a lost traveler, but he was leaving as a legend. If only the rest of the universe knew about the Lixman and his grand adventure with the Thalari tribe. The engines roared to life, and with a final wave, he lifted off, watching as the lights of the Thalari village faded below him. With a grin, Jack muttered to himself, "Not bad for a day's work." As Jack's ship soared into the sky, he couldn't help but think back to the unexpected turn his life had taken in the past few days. The Thalari tribe, with their strange customs, had transformed his perception of the galaxy. He had gone from being a lost human stranded on an alien world to a living legend, a Lixman, no less. And while he couldn't entirely shake the absurdity of it all, something in him felt proud. The honor, albeit in the most unconventional way possible, was a bond he'd never forget. As his ship ascended and broke through the clouds, the lights of the village below began to fade into the distance. It was both humbling and surreal to think that he had been part of something so significant to these beings. They would talk about him for generations, and Jack had to admit, the thought amused him. He'd left them laughing, their sensors now more vibrant than ever, their spirits lifted, and all thanks to his unlikely participation in their bizarre rituals. A beeping sound interrupted his reflection, pulling him back to reality. Jack glanced at the control panel. A blinking light indicated a message incoming. He pressed the button, and the screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar face, a human voice he hadn't heard in days. It was his old crew member, Sarah. "Jack! There you are!" Sarah's voice was practically filled with relief. "Where the hell have you been? We've been searching for you. The last coordinates you sent us, well, they led us to a dead zone. Are you okay?" Jack leaned back in his chair, a grin tugging at his lips as he relaxed into the seat. "Oh, I'm fine. You wouldn't believe the kind of trouble I've gotten into," he said, chuckling. "You're telling me you're okay?" Sarah replied, clearly not convinced. "We lost all comms for almost a week. I thought you were stuck on a strange planet? About to be eaten by space monsters?" Jack interjected with a mock-serious tone. "It's not as bad as it sounds. Actually, I'm coming back with a great story, Sarah. You won't believe it." She looked at him, confused but curious. "What happened? What could be so?" Jack paused dramatically, eyes glinting with mischief. "Well, let's just say I've become the subject of a revered ritual. I'm now a Lixman." There was a long pause on the other end. A what? Elixman, Jack repeated, suppressing a laugh. You know, a human who's revered by an alien tribe to help activate their thermal sensors. Apparently, they have this ancient tradition, and I accidentally became part of it. They think I'm some legendary figure from their mythology. They've never been happier. He could hear Sarah's stunned silence before she responded. Wait, so you're telling me you licked their sensors? And now they worship you? Not worship per se, Jack explained, trying to suppress his amusement. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Sarah blinked, clearly baffled. Jack, this is insane. Did you just... Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Jack cut her off with a smirk. Anyway, I'm all set to leave this place. The tribe's on Cloud 9 now, so I think my job here is done. Time to head home. Well, just don't forget to tell the rest of the crew, Sarah said, still processing. We've been worried sick. Jack leaned back in his chair, tapping a few buttons on the console. Don't worry, Sarah. I'm coming back, but now I've got a reputation to uphold. You guys won't believe the stories I've got to share. The connection buzzed a little as the transmission ended, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts again. He glanced out of the cockpit window, watching the stars streak by as his ship gained speed. For the first time in a while, he felt the weight of his journey truly lift. He'd come to this alien world in a state of confusion, unsure of how he'd get out of the mess he'd found himself in. But now, he was leaving it with a bizarre but undeniable sense of accomplishment. The whole experience had taught him something. Sometimes, you don't need to have the answers to everything. Sometimes, it's about embracing the absurd, rolling with the punches, and finding humor in the unexpected. It was something the Thalari had understood better than anyone. They had welcomed him with open arms, not just because he was useful, but because they knew how to enjoy life's strange little moments. As Jack continued his journey home, a thought crossed his mind. Maybe his experience would be the weirdest chapter in his life, but it wasn't going to be the last one. The universe was vast and filled with surprises, and who knew what kind of strange adventures awaited him next? Maybe the next alien world would offer something even more ridiculous. Maybe it would be a world where humans were revered for their ability to, he chuckled to himself, rate alien performances or judge dance battles. Whatever it was, Jack was ready. He was no longer the same confused human who had crash-landed on an unknown planet. He was now a seasoned explorer, a Lixman, with stories no one would believe unless they were there to see it for themselves. And that, as absurd as it seemed, was something worth celebrating. The ship hummed steadily as it glided through the stars, and Jack, now with a satisfied grin, leaned back in his chair. His journey was far from over, and this chapter, strange as it was, would forever be a reminder that in this universe, anything could happen,